Okay, welcome to our second class in our series, The 8 Dayas, A Jewish Guide to Being Human. And we are uh, up to Dayah One, the first Dayah. We explained last week what a Dayah is. Dayah is from the word das. The class is based, not loosely, the class is based very strongly on the 7 habits of highly effective people. So what Stephen Covey calls habits, we're calling Dayas. A Dayah from the word yada, to know, is when you become intimately bound with a piece of knowledge to the point where it becomes you and you're not quoting it anymore. Like when somebody gets very, when it's like in a sense becoming intimate with knowledge. When that knowledge and you have become one and there's no longer a need to quote it, that's what we're calling a daya, which what Stephen Covey calls a habit. So we want these ideas to, we want to integrate these ideas. We want them to become a part of us, that you can't differentiate between us and the idea. So that's a daya. So the first daya, which is really what the other 7 dayas are predicated on, and this is what makes all the other dayas possible, is what we call בחרת, בחיים, or in English we're calling it live life. Now, just to go a little step further, is this daya makes all the other dayas possible. And all of the 8 dayas make Yiddishkeit possible. Remember, this shir isn't a this is a class, it's not a shir. This shir, or this class, sorry, is teaching us how to be human. It's not teaching us how to be Jewish. Judaism begins where humanity ends, in the positive sense. Yeah, once we've become fully human, now we're capable of being fully Jewish. So this class, this set of classes, this series is teaching us how to be human. And once we've mastered the art of being human, then we can really get deeply involved in being Jewish. So to make this even more relevant is that if our Yiddishkeit is predicated on the eight dayas, the 8 dayas or the seven next dayas are predicated on this one daya. This daya is the most important thing that I've ever learned in my life. Live life is the most important thing I've ever learned in my life by definition. Why? Because without knowing this, you're not living life. That's why it's called live life. You are being lived by life. And that is, unfortunately, the default position of most of us. We are being lived by life. We are a victim of our lives as opposed to the hero of our lives. And that is the beginning of everything. And so we're the first thing we're going to do, we're going to break down this class. It makes sense to write stuff down if you're able to, because a lot of these put a lot of thought into this, and we've systemized it down. So every day we're going to break down into 4 parts. Okay, we've got the definition, we've got the significance, we've got challenges, and we've got integration. So each one of the days we're going to go through, we're going to talk about it, we're going to define it, then we're going to talk about its significance, we're going to talk about the challenges that there are to it, and then we're going to talk about how to integrate it. Okay, so that's going to cover us through the whole course. And I want to just draw attention to the first idea of definition. Defining things is literally a matter of life and death. You have to define stuff. You have to define terms. We have to know clearly what we're talking about. That's just a very, very deep lesson for life. If you don't have your terms defined, then you're in trouble. And everybody you talk to is going to be in trouble as well. Very important to have terms defined. And you'll be amazed, maybe you wouldn't, how often we don't have our terms defined. So that's just a lesson in its own right. The first thing we're going to do with each of these days is define them. So I've written these down and I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about them. So if you want to write these ideas down, feel free. Um, Okay, definition of live life is 5 simple words. Taking responsibility for your behavior. Yitzi, definition of live life, yeah, which is the first day.
בחרת בחיים.
Yeah, בחרת בחיים. The definition of live life is taking responsibility for your behavior. That is the first step to everything. Before we do that, we didn't begin. We weren't born. We Pashut weren't born. Before we take responsibility for our behavior, it's like we weren't even born. Okay? And another thing that's very helpful when you're defining something is defining its opposite. So the definition of בחרת בחיים, which means choose life, which we're saying live life, is taking responsibility for your behavior. Defining its opposite is automatic reactive behavior driven by feelings and external circumstances. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the opposite of live life. Automatic reactive behavior driven by feelings and external circumstances. Okay. Now, I've also come up with 3 affirmations. These are also very good to have and even to recite once a day or a couple of times a day. These can be very helpful. So affirmation 1 is, it is my responsibility to live life and not be lived by life. Is everyone feeling like the heaviness of what we're talking about here? Just give me a thumbs up, people with their screens off, if you can feel how heavy this is. Yeah, this is really it. This is the beginning. Yeah, before we start taking responsibility for our lives, we're not alive. Okay, so affirmation 1 is, it is my responsibility to live life and not be lived by life. No one can do this for you. No one. Not your mum, not your dad, not your kids, not your spouse, not your Rebbe. No one. Only you can take responsibility to live your life. So affirmation 1 is, it is my responsibility to live, it is my responsibility to live life and not be lived by life. Okay, affirmation 2. I can subordinate my feelings to values. These are atomic bombs. So affirmation 2 is, I can subordinate my feelings to values. Again, affirmation 3. I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my choices. So one more time. Affirmation 3 is, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my choices.
Writing this down.
What'd you say?
I'm like, should I be writing this down?
I think I would write it down. I mean, I did write it down. I just did it before you guys. I spent a lot of time. This is a lot of, I mean, this is a lot of time that I put into this. The past 20 years I've put into this, and then to actually write these things down, I spent a good few hours. But yeah. So we'll say it one more time because this is very
Yeah.
important. Definition is taking responsibility for your behavior. That is the definition of live life. And we could say that's a very cute way of saying it. I am response able, meaning I am able to respond. I'm not reactive, I'm proactive. I decide my response. It's not left up to the programming that I've been subject to over the past 40 odd years. So definition is taking responsibility for your behavior. Defining its opposite, which is a very good thing to do as well, is automatic reactive behavior driven by feelings and external circumstances.
That's the opposite definition.
Yeah, that's like, that's like a piece of wheat in the wind. Frank Zappa wrote a song called "Any Way the Wind Blows." Any way the wind blows, just whatever way the wind blows, that's me. Just I go this way, the wind blows this way. I go this way, the wind blows that way. I go that way. Wherever you want. You know what we call that in our in secular parlance? Flaky. Flaky. Whichever way the wind blows. So that's the opposite. Yeah, automatic reactive behavior driven by feelings and external circumstances. I need 120 years to learn and integrate this. There's still another 7 days. Yeah, this is it, Mrs. Silver. This is this. If you can get this, and you can get this, we'll talk about how to get this. The other days will come naturally, B'ezrat Hashem. And if the other days become natural, then your Yiddishkeit will also flow naturally as well. This is really everything. It really is everything. It really is. Okay, so affirmation 1 is, again, it is my responsibility. It is my responsibility. No one else's responsibility to live life and not be lived by life. I am not a victim of my life. I am the hero in my life. I will make decisions. I will make choices. I will not have my life dictate how I behave. So it is my responsibility to live life and not be lived by life. Affirmation 2, I can subordinate my feelings to values. How do we know that? What's the example that I always give? So the example is that a guy hasn't smoked for he's quit smoking. Yeah, he hasn't smoked for 6 months. He's had a terrible day. His wife shouted at him. He lost a couple of clients. Yeah, his bank overcharged him for something. He's hungry. He didn't sleep enough. Yeah, and that's it. He bought a packet of cigarettes, and there's nothing anyone can do or say. He is, like in Star Trek when they get sucked into that that beam and it sucks them into the spaceship. Is it Star Trek? Like beam me up, Scotty, kind of thing.
Yeah.
What's it called? The traction beam. Yeah. It's like it's impossible. I can't not do this. You've got the cigarette, you've got the lighter, you're about to do it, yeah? And you're gonna put it to your you're gonna smoke a cigarette, and nothing anyone can say will do anything. And a guy jumps out from behind the bin, behind the trash can, and says, "Here's $10,000 to not smoke that cigarette." Done. Finished. The timer's gone. What I thought 2 seconds ago was an absolute finished, done, signed, sealed, impossible to resist. 2 seconds later, with a check of $10,000 or wad of cash, it's not even there anymore. Poof, just went away. Isn't that amazing? So we are in control of we are able to subordinate feelings to values. And that little story is a story of that, where your value for money supersedes your value for that cigarette. And therefore, if you're a healthy human being, which most people are, when we mean healthy, I don't mean that you're like the most perfect together kind of, laser sharp kind of person. We're just talking that you're a normal functioning human being. Yeah. You're not sick. You're not psychotic, or, you're not chemically ill. Yeah. Which is probably at least 90% of us, maybe more. You are able to subordinate feelings to values. Okay. Number 3, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my choices. Okay, so this is really the question, is, are you in control of your life, or do you feel that your life is controlling you? Sue, could you turn off your mic, please? Are you are you in control of your life, or is your life in control of you? If you don't feel that you're in control of your life, and that doesn't mean you're very busy, that doesn't mean you don't have loads of commitments and every second counts. It just means, do you feel like you aren't guided, you aren't directing your life somewhere? And most people aren't. Most people's life is just dragging them wherever it goes. Most people just get pulled through life and then they die. So we need to take control. Now, what we're going to find out later, which is the third day, is, well, I need to have a destination. Okay. So that's going to be important. But even before you have a destination, you have to have reclaimed control. That doesn't mean, again, like I said, that doesn't mean that you're doing a lot of things that you don't even want to be doing. That could be that you're doing a lot of things you don't want to be doing. I'm not talking about bad behavior. I'm talking about in things like work and stuff like that. But at least you're moving to you're moving somewhere. It's with a cheshbon. It's with some kind of evaluation. And before you're doing that, you're basically you're just basically living out a program. You're basically like a turtle in Mario, as opposed to Mario himself. That is called a NPC. Yeah, that is a non-player character, as opposed to a player character like Mario. That's the difference. And this is really the difference of a human being and an animal. This, not speech, but this is really, Rashi says that the difference in a human being and animal is Dayah V'dibor. Yeah, but Dayah comes first. See, an animal can be trained. An animal can be conditioned. Yeah? Animals can be trained to do crazy things. But an animal can't take responsibility for the training. That's the difference between a human being and an animal. That we are able to make a conscious decision to habituate ourselves to X, Y, or Z. Or Z. Difference between a human being and an animal is an animal can be trained. A human being can take responsibility for the training. That's exactly what we just said before. An animal could be trained is like the person who is getting led by life, just being led by life. That's called being trained. Who are you being trained by? Well, by life. Whereas the live life person, she's decided that they are going to move their life in this direction. That's the difference between being an animal and being a human. That's why this is the first stage. The first step of being human is take control of your life and take responsibility for your life. Okay? So what's the significance? That's definition, part one. Definition of live life. The significance of live life, I think everyone understands that automatically, is like we said before, it's the difference between being a turtle and being Mario. It's the difference between, if you want to understand it Al-Pi Kabbalah, like mystically, is if you have a picture of a vase. You ever seen that thing where you have two faces and a vase in the middle? The vase in the middle, the negative space in the middle, the vase. How do you say that in America? The vase?
Vase, yeah.
Vase, the vase. Okay, in England, the vase, in America, the vase. That creates a negative space in the middle, and you have the two faces on either side, yeah? If we're not living life, we become the vase in the middle. We become the tool to help define somebody who is living life. You've just become graphics. Scary. It's really scary, but that's really what it is. Al-Pi Kabbalah. Stephen Covey doesn't talk about this. But if a person isn't proactively living his life or her life, then they have become a graphic in the game and they are being used for somebody who is living their life? That would be so embarrassing, just as a side point. Imagine going up to heaven after 120 years and they're just not paying any attention to you. And you're like, what about this or that? And they're like, that wasn't for you. That was just so that person that you walked in front of in the street, they could do this. That wasn't about you. That's the significance of this. That's the significance. It's the difference between being an intrinsic player and being a graphic. It's a great muscle, a great analogy for it is the idea of the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer. What's the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer?
The thermostat can actually make the change.
Thermostat does make the change. A person who lives life is a thermostat. A person who's being lived by life is a thermometer. When things are good, you're great. When things aren't so good, you're not so great. Like the chaff in the wind, just like the wheat in the wind, whichever way the wind blows. Whereas the person living life is the thermostat. They are directing the conversations they're involved in. They are making proactive choices, whether they're going to do this, whether they're not going to do this, whether this is worth the investment of their time, whether this is not worth the investment of their time, etc. So they're the thermostat. And the one being lived by life is the thermometer. And it's the difference between self-pity and feeling victimized, like victimhood and self-pity, then empowerment, resilience, determination, accountability. That's the difference. The person who's living life is thoroughly empowered in every situation. And the person who's being lived by life is pitiful and feels like a victim the whole time, no power. That's another very big difference. And it will transform all of your relationships. What are the 3 relationships we have in this world? With yourself
Hashem and
Others.
each other.
and with Hashem. All your relationships are either one of those, with yourself, with Hashem, or with others. Ben Adam le'atzmo, Ben Adam l'chaveru, Ben Adam l'makom. Choosing to live life means you will actually, not just it will improve your relationships with these 3 options, but you'll actually be able to have a relationship. Before a person is living life, their relationships are not real relationships. They're just reactive. They're just reactive. I don't know what you call them. But this is a prerequisite. A prerequisite for relationships is living life and not being lived by life. Okay, now we're going to get very practical. Okay, so the challenges. So first you have to define, we spoke about this a little bit last week, and then I gave this over in the Pick Avashir, which Yitzi really appreciated, is what we call the space between stimulus and response. And we're calling that the TRS, if you want to write this down, the thoughtful response space. This is called the TRS. The thoughtful response space. The TRS exists between what happens and what you do. Now, in an animal, that space does not exist. You know what's a really good example? I was actually doing this today. You know what HTML script is? So I was doing a thing on one of my websites, and I'm using the chatbot now to create HTML for me to do certain things. And I really don't understand HTML, yeah, but I know enough to be able to and I'm not scared, so I do, because I know you can just click, undo. So you see, it says PX10, yeah, 10 pixels. So you just see what that does. You put in a 0 in the middle. So from PX10, it turns to PX100, and all of a sudden you just see something go boom, like a space appear in your, So I was messing around. When you put the digit in, yeah, immediately the effect takes place. The computer doesn't like see the number go up. You don't see the computer going, okay, let's do that. That's not how it works. As you put in the number, the effect takes the change takes effect. That is called a 0 TRS. There is no TRS bichlal. Yeah, there is no thoughtful response space. That is HTML script. Is that alive? No. Same with an animal. Yeah, an animal. Like I remember seeing a video one time of tigers that were in captivity, but not they were wild tigers being caught in Sri Lanka or something like this. Yeah, and it was like a big room full of these tigers that had been replaced, but they were mamish wild tigers. Yeah, mamish wild tigers. Now tigers are ambush predators, which means they don't chase. They're not like cheetahs or lions that chase their prey. Lions are a little bit of an ambush predator, but tigers pounce on their prey, yeah, and they pounce on their back. They always attack from behind. Tigers always attack from behind, yeah. So in this video I saw, it was amazing. There's all these cages of tigers, and as the person walks through, this person, I think it was a woman, she wasn't feeding the tigers, she was just walking through, yeah, walking through the compound. And there were the cages of tigers as she's walking through. And if you watch the video, as she walks through and the tigers see her back, you see the tigers in the cages go dung, 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 dung. Like as the tiger sees her back, the tiger immediately like kind of gets ready to pounce. It assumes its position. The tiger is unable to not assume its position when it sees the back of something. You with me? That again is called a zero TRS. A 0 TRS. So just like HTML script and just like an animal, yeah, that is what a human being is who is reactive. And we know what that means. Someone cuts you up in the car, or let's think of another way. Something pops into your mind to say. That's what it's like by most people, yeah? Something pops into your mind to say, and it's already out your mouth. That's a 0 TRS. That's a 0 TRS. Sometimes it feels like people have a negative TRS before it pops into them. But anyway, when something now that could be like a guy cuts you up in the street, yeah, when you're driving. Now do you scream and shout, or do you? So that 0 TRS would be a guy cuts you up and you scream at him, yeah. A 0 TRS would also be the thought to say something, the desire to say something, or the desire to eat something comes up, and you don't allow yourself a gap to choose, and you just do. That is the challenge of live life. Okay. Now we've got what we've called two zones. Yeah. If you can imagine a big circle with a smaller circle in the middle of it. Okay. This is a really helpful thing to write down. So if you do want to do this, you want to draw a big circle, and then in the middle, not a small circle, but a smaller circle. Yeah. The middle circle is called the fix-it zone. The external circle is called the fear-it zone. If I just ask anybody now, you can either write it or shout it out. Easier to shout it out. something that you're worrying about right now. Don't get too personal, but something that is on your mind that you're worrying about.
We should say it.
Yeah.
I try to get my daughter into something and she's waitlisted.
Okay. Anything else? Let's write that down. Can you think of just a quick title to a title for that? Daughter. What? Wait. Oh, she's on a waiting list.
She's on a waiting list. Yeah, I thought I would get her
Okay.
into something and she's waitlisted, and I have to
So
wait for somebody to get her in, possibly. So I'm worried about it. Is she going to get in or not?
yeah. How can we title that? So waiting for an answer. Let's call that waiting for an answer.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? What are we worried about? My son's in Shidduchim, yeah? Son's trying to get married. I bet you there are a few people in the world who just now were worried about who was going to become the president of the United States. Yeah?
Well,
And
that's already settled.
but people were worried about
Oh,
that.
were.
Were worried. Yeah? There's also people
Mhm.
who are very worried about the environment. There's people who are worried about um, one second. My son needs to be placed into yeshiva. He's home now. He's yeshivaless. Okay, that's a bit like what Yitzi just said. Okay,
Waiting.
but yeah, he's waiting. So what I'm just trying to establish here is that we've got things that we are worried about that we can do something. We can do something about, and there are things that we're worried about that we can't do anything about. Okay. So now, Yitzi, it makes sense that you're worried about your daughter, but you can actually turn that into proactive. I mean, if there is something you can do about it, then there is. If there isn't, then you need to let it go. Or maybe you could find some kind of different option. There could be a different option. This is called the fear zone and the fix zone. Now, everything falls into basically three categories that kind of straddle these ideas. Things that we have direct control over, things that we have indirect control over that we can kind of influence, and things that we have no control over. So the things that you can directly control, that's your behaviors. You can directly control your behavior. Things that you can indirectly control, that's other people's behaviors. You can't make someone behave in a certain way, but you can influence them. You can influence them in a direction, but you can't change them. You can never change someone. You can help them change themselves. That's called indirect control. And then there is things that you've got no control over, like the economy, like the weather, like your past, what happened to you in your past. That's it. So now let's talk about the actions. Now, a live life person, a proactive person, yeah, they spend zero energy thinking about things that are not in their control. Zero. A truly proactive person will never talk about the weather for the sake, maybe for somebody, maybe for someone else, but a proactive person, the weather is not part of it's not part of their life. It is what it is. It's gonna make a difference what I think about it. Yeah. He also won't talk about politics as well. A truly live life mentality is not concerned about politics. If they'll have to find out to make a decent decision in the vote who they're going to vote for. They might exert some energy reading up on policies or speaking to some people who know what's going on. Yeah, but that's not going to be their topic of conversation. A proactive person, you can worry about the war though. I don't see the point of that. I mean, if you have to run to a bomb shelter, you have to run to a bomb shelter. But otherwise, just put it out your mind. Unless you're going to do something about it, put it out your mind. What's the point? If you want to pray for people, then that's fine. Okay, that's good. But if you're just worrying about the war, yeah, what's the what are you gaining from that? That's not what a live life.
But why can't you control that? Like somebody who's sick, let's say, like I'm not a doctor, so I can't control it, but I can daven. I can daven for the war. That's proactive.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but it's also, but it's so it's somewhat in my control. Is it in my control? It's some
Well,
it's
so when we
somewhat in
talk
my
about
control.
davening, then everything's in your control. Yeah, even the weather as well. But
Yeah.
that's not where your mind's at. A proactive person is thinking about my behavior. That's where the proactive person is.
Mm.
What can I do to help? Now, he might see the war and then he's not just sitting there thinking, oh, this is terrible, this is terrible. His or her mindset will be, well, how can I help? Maybe all I can do is daven. Maybe I can make food packages. Maybe I can go out there and strap a gun, strap on a gun and go and kill some people. I don't know. But that's where the proactive mind is. And if he decides that there's nothing he can do, or she decides there's nothing she can do, oof, it's gone. Everyone's with me? If you can't do anything about it, then forget about it. Don't lose energy on it.
So when it comes to the war or somebody who's sick, then that means, you know, somebody can be proactive and help with the war. They can raise money for certain places and send money to certain. They can call people.
then
They
that
can.
then, so then that doesn't fall in the no, that doesn't fall in the zero control zone.
Mhm.
Like the war in the Ukraine, you're not going to do anything about that. You've got half a
Yes.
minute to send food packages to the Ukraine.
No. The fear it zone is the outside, and the fix it zone is the middle. So you want us to be in
Exactly.
the middle?
Exactly. The live life person is living there like they're in the fix it zone, not in the fear it zone.
So if you could fix it, good. If you can't, move on.
Exactly. You just said it beautifully. Perfect. So we have to work out what are the things that I can actually do something about and what are the things that I can't. And if I can't do anything about it, let it go. Let it go. You will be healthier. Your spouse will be healthier. Your children will be healthier. Everybody who knows you will be healthier for it. Very good idea. Okay, we have to move a little quicker now. There's, in regards to challenges, we've got the real issue of language. This is one of the we're going to talk about something in a minute that's even more. This is extremely important in regards to becoming a live life person. Okay, is being careful with how you speak. Meaning, there's all these kinds of languages. There's like victim language, there's blaming language, there's passive language, there's pessimistic language. These kinds of languages, I'll give you examples in a minute, paralyze you. So, for example, victim language, yeah, there's nothing I can do. Saying something like that. If it's something that you can do something about, I'm saying, we're not saying that if, see, you would never say is there's nothing I can do because you wouldn't be talking about those kinds of things if you're a live life person. But if something's happened to you and you say there's nothing I can do, the live life response would be, what actions can I take to improve the situation? Or that's just the way I am, as opposed to I'm capable of growth and change. Or it's not my fault. I'll take responsibility for my role and I'll work on what I can change. I can't help it. I can choose how I respond and take steps to improve. You see the difference between reactive language and proactive language? Another one. This is blaming language. He or she makes me so angry. Or I control my emotions and can choose how to react. The economy is to blame for my situation. I'll adapt and explore new opportunities to improve my situation. Or it's my parents' fault. I can learn and acquire the skills I need right now. This is the difference between a person who is being lived by life and a person who is living life. Language that basically disempowers me and stops me. Like another thing people say is, I tried my best. Sue, do you think you can ever say that? I tried my best? Susie, you hear me? You're on,
I could say it.
you're on mute. You're on mute. Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway,
I could say it. I could say it. I'm at a basketball game. I play my best. I try my hardest. Other team was better. I tried my best.
good. But the the I hear in a sports situation, maybe you could say such a thing. Um, when it comes to like something that you could the way those words are usually used, I appreciate what you just said, Yitzi. The way those words are usually used are disempowering. Not that you should be getting down on yourself, but when you kind of throw up your hands and say, look, I did my best, what can I do? You're like we've said before, there's always a little bit more to squeeze out of the toothpaste tube. Yeah, there's nearly always a little bit more than you can do. I'm not saying that you should use this now to get down on yourself, but if there's a situation where there is more action available and the person says, I did my best, yeah, that is very disempowering. Another word that the live life person erases from their mind is the word overwhelmed. The live life person never ever uses the word overwhelmed. They might say instead of that, they might say, I'm quite busy, even I'm very busy, but never ever will they use the word overwhelmed because all overwhelmed does is paralyze you. I mean, you're overwhelmed. What can you do? You're overwhelmed. You can't move forward from that. The lived life, the person who's being lived by life uses the word overwhelmed a lot because it putters them. How do you say that in English? It exempts them from having to live life. It exempts them from having to be proactive in their life. Because once you're overwhelmed, it's done, finished. Okay, we could talk about that a lot longer, but let's just finish off on another idea that we could give an entire class on. And this is integration. How do we become a live life person? What is the ultimate tool that we have available to us? The ultimate technique that we have available to us that will allow us to live life as opposed to being lived by life. 4 words. Itzy got it. These are the 4 most important words. By the way, Yitzi, we just put we went to print we got a sponsor. We went to print another 250 Reclaiming Sanity. And I put a 4-page essay in the front about these 4 words. Sue, Mrs. Silver, Sophie. Yes. Thank you. She got it. Good one, Mrs. Silver. Making and keeping promises. Those are literally the most important words I know in English. Making and keeping promises. That is how you become a live life person. Want to live life? Make promises and keep them. Why? What does that do? Because when you make a promise and you keep it, why would you not keep a promise? If you make a commitment, what would stop you from keeping that commitment? What's the number
You're
one?
overwhelmed.
What?
You're overwhelmed.
The number one, IKUV, has it IKUV? Preventative. The number one thing that prevents us from keeping commitments is one word in English. You just said it on spur of moment to stop a behavior. It didn't really mean it. Okay, you can say that. The one thing that usually stops us from fulfilling our commitments is the word feeling. We don't feel like it. I know I said I'll be there at 10 o'clock, but I don't feel like it. Doesn't that sound like the definition of not living life? Doesn't that sound like the definition of having given up the TRS? I feel like it. I don't feel like it. I have a commitment, but I don't feel like it. So I'm not going to do it. Whereas if we've made the commitment and now we subordinate our feelings to our commitment, we just gave birth to ourselves. We literally just got born. We said we are going to be there at 10. We're walking out the house. It's 9:30. Yeah, I'm going to be on time. As I'm walking out of the house, I see the place where all my kids' shoes are is a big mess. And I just have this need has overwhelmed me to order and to work out that little area. How can I walk out my house without having done that? And you know that if you do that, you're going to be late. If you can clench your fists, yeah, grit your teeth, and say, I'm going to do that later. I have a commitment to be there at 10 o'clock. I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock. You just became more human. That's amazing. You just became more human. And then what happens is it's a snowball effect. You start to trust yourself. We should really give a class on this. I mean, I did give a class on this not so long ago, on the class about this not so long ago. But it's a snowball effect. As you start to make promises and keep them, you begin to trust yourself. And as we all know, the three most empowering words you can ever say to anyone is not "I love you," not even close. The three most powerful words you can say to anybody is "I trust you." Those words are so empowering. You have to try and find as many opportunities to say that to your children as you possibly can. And that's not easy because you have to earn trust. So there's going to be this stage where you have to extend trust where maybe it's not obvious that you would trust, but you have to extend. Like you'll find out when you teach your children how to drive. Yeah, that's a great experience of having to extend trust to your children, and it's hard. It's really hard. But what happens is when you make commitments and you keep them, you start to trust yourself. And as you trust yourself, your relationship with yourself strengthens because you actually start to become a human being. There starts to be a person there. If you are just a piece of wheat floating, being blown in every direction in the field, yeah, there's no human being there. Like we just said, that's like HTML script. You're just an AI. You're just an AI. Whatever gets inputted in, it comes out. The AI doesn't choose. The AI just connects. It just plays out its HTML code. So before you can actually take control and create this TRS, this thoughtful response space, yeah, there is no person there. So how do you start to develop that TRS? That's through making and keeping promises. By subordinating your feelings to your word, you become alive, and now you are in the driver's seat. And that means you can start driving to where you need to get to. Before that, you were in the passenger seat and you were just at the mercy of the driver, or you were on the horse and you were at the mercy of the horse. Now you've become a jockey Well, now you've become the actual driver. So that's hands down, in my opinion, the ultimate tool that we have at our disposal to acquire the first Dayah, live life, making and keeping promises. And live life is the foundation of the next 7 Dayahs. And these 8 Dayahs are the foundation for living the life of an Ish Yisrael, which we're all hired to do. And yeah, we should be Zeicha. That's it. B'ezrat Hashem. That was Dayah One. Baxart, B'chaim, live life. Okay.
Can I
Any
ask a question?
questions? Yeah, sure.
How do we use feelings in a positive way? When do feelings come in?
How do we use what in a positive way?
Feelings. When do feelings come in a positive way?
We need to channel feelings into positive action. So, and it's the action. Now, if you notice at the very beginning, we define, it's actually really good you're saying this now, because it says the definition we said was taking responsibility for your behavior. We didn't say taking responsibility for your feelings, because you can't take responsibility for your feelings. Someone says something horrible to you, you feel a certain way. It's not, you didn't choose to feel like that. That just happened, yeah? But now the behavior, remember, what's behavior? What are the 3 modes of behavior?
Thought, speech, and action.
Exactly. So now you have these feelings because someone said something horrible to you, and that's just you, okay? Like, my Israeli kids, they don't get affected like my wife and I when someone insults them. Yeah, that's just who they are. But what you are in charge of is your behavior. So when someone says something horrible to you, now what you do have control over is your thinking. Now, if you want to sit there and dwell on, and not dwell on, what's the word? Wallow in what that person said to you, now you're going to go down and down and down and down and down. But if you can either quantify yourself with your thinking and explain how it wasn't, that's their problem, you didn't do anything wrong, and if you did, you fix it, or you just distract yourself and think about something else, then those emotions will actually go away. We are in control. Emotions are a product of our minds. So the more we can take responsibility for our minds, then the more productive our emotions are going to be. And you need emotions to do anything in the world. So it's like a spiral. As you were saying, how do we use these emotions? Is that when the emotions come, now you use the TRS to determine what's the behavior. Am I going to wallow in this thought, or am I going to now create positive thoughts and transform this? And now you're going to be able to transform this emotion. That's the key that we have to transforming our emotions, is our behavior. It's funny. So how do you feel like a tzaddik? Is you act like a tzaddik, because the behavior is in your control, and the behavior will feed back into the system, and it will lead to productive emotions. Is that clear? Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Michael, that was I'm going, or that was a question? You're going. Okay, Kol Tov, Thanks.
Thank you. It was fantastic.
My pleasure. Like
Okay.